Non-tech execs often make the same mistake when budgeting for custom software. They don't account for the expenses that come after the product gets built. In this video, I'll make sure these costs don't sink your next tech project. Hi, my name is Adam McGowan, Firefield's CEO. My day job is to help non-technical leaders harness technology to grow, protect, or spark change in their businesses. I created tech for the exec to do the same for you. In this video, I'm going to break down the ongoing costs necessary to keep your new software product running and evolving like it should. All right, the first category of ongoing costs is hosting. So this has to do with the servers themselves, where the application and database live and run and operate. So you're going to have to rent them, share them, purchase them in some way, shape, or form. You've got to get some servers and they're going to cost you money. With respect to the cloud, these prices tend to be coming down and down and down, but it's still important for you to make sure that you budget this into your overall estimate. There's a lot of factors that are going to impact cost here. It's going to have to do with what the volume of traffic looks like, what the complexity of the application is, how responsive or quickly does it need to react to usage, how much data is going to be stored in the tool, what's the level of security required for the tool. All these factors are going to have really big impacts on what your monthly expense might look like to a player like Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Google, or others. And if your product is going to be enterprise grade, so meaning it has to, you run your business on it and it's mission critical, there are other factors to keep in mind too. So one has to do with redundancy, or this relates to disaster recovery, if you will. What if one of your servers stops working properly? You need backups. Well, does that system need to immediately and seamlessly transition over to new tools? Well, probably yes. That costs money, and it includes some complexity as well. So redundancy is really, really important to keep in mind. Another factor is called auto scaling. So auto scaling means as more and more volume of traffic or usage or heavy loads on your tool come into play and they continue to bump up the usage, what is the system able to do? Is it able to meet the demand dynamically? Is it not able to meet the demand? Is it able to do that in a static way, meaning you've got to account for the days when you have the most usage and then pay for that excess capacity the rest of the days? These are really important. So certainly the provider or team that you work with will have ideas as to how to do this, but it's important to make sure you understand how things like auto scaling are going to have an impact on the enterprise component of your hosting. Now, not knowing your project, it's impossible to make a real estimate here as to what hosting might cost, but expect that it could range for a very, very simple prototype-like product in the hundreds of dollars into the tens of thousands if you have an enterprise-grade, production-ready tool with vast amounts of data, high redundancy, auto scaling, all of those sorts of high-end functionality. The second category of ongoing costs have to do with monitoring and operations. So let me start with monitoring. So monitoring has to check on the health and performance of the application itself. It usually does this in a couple of different areas. So one is simply pure performance. Is your application up and running? Is your application running slowly? Is the capacity of your servers reaching its fullest level, and pretty soon you're going to be in a problematic situation. So monitoring from a performance perspective, really important. You also need to address monitoring from a bug perspective. So is the app actually work as expected? So even if the servers have plenty of capacity to be able to handle all the traffic, what if you go to click on a particular link and it's broken, or the functionality doesn't work as expected? That's a terrible outcome and you need to know it happened. Some users will be very thoughtful or possibly angry and let you know. It oftentimes can happen, especially if the issue is small, that no one ever tells you. So monitoring to automatically make sure you understand about these issues, really, really important. And the third type of monitoring has to do with security. Are there attempts to hack into your system? Is there seemingly illicit behavior going on? Are there people with possible nefarious purpose trying to get into your tool? So depending on the level of mission critical usage of your app, how much security you need may vary. But if you do in fact need it, monitoring security is a really important and a material expense you've got to make sure you're considering. And ongoing expenses regarding operations have to do with other functional components of your app that require paying third parties to make them run. So a great example is the sending of emails. So it's really complicated to be able to send emails effectively. Getting through spam filters, dealing with all the different email clients that process emails differently. It's really hard to be able to do it well. And as a result, it's incredibly costly to try to develop an entire email sending tool on your own. So today there's services that do it for you, but they have to get paid. They do their job well, but they have to get paid. So that's one example where you have an outside third party you've got to subscribe to, and it's an ongoing cost you need to be responsible for. The same could be said for processing payments. Dealing with security and compliance around keeping credit cards, there are providers that do this very well to take that risk off your hands, but it comes at a cost. Got to make sure you know what it is, how long you're going to pay it, and whether or not those terms change over time. And there are other examples, things like marketing automation. Marketing automation in its simplest terms means that when someone performs some behavior in your application, possibly coming to a website, downloading some content, you may have ways to be able to go back and re-engage them to turn them into a customer. Really sophisticated tools exist to do this, but like everything else, they cost money. So if it's important and needed, you have to make sure you think about that as well. And lastly, other tools like document or data management. Are you using third-party tools to manage any of that type of information? If you do, make sure to incorporate those costs into your estimations as well. Third category of costs is what I'm describing as maintenance. So maintenance falls in a couple of different buckets. So one is just pure periodic upkeep of the application. So something called, for example, a security patch. So if you use some software language to write a new application, well, hackers are getting increasingly good, and they never stop at trying to get themselves, into new tools. And they're constantly trying to find vulnerabilities in systems. And so a bunch of white hats, if you will, or people out there doing good will continue to build patches to defend against that. It happens all the time. It's a natural course of development. Well, when those patches come up, someone's got to make sure that they're incorporating them into your tool to keep the tool up to speed, up to date, and at the highest level of security that your customers and your workforce are going to demand. Another typical maintenance behavior is just keeping up with compatibility. So think about the operating system on your Windows or maybe your Mac machine. When a new operating system comes in, you have all these reminders. Update your software, install this, happens on your mobile phone all the time, the number of updates that come through. The frequency of updates is likely going to be less with the tools that you build with, but it still exists. Making sure that app is up to date, it's current, and it's able to be, for example, able to install those security patches we just talked about as quickly and efficiently as possible. You can't do it if you don't keep the application up to date. And then lastly here, just pure performance improvements. So these are not new features or functions, but maybe the application was built in such a way that it expected a certain volume of usage. And let's say things are going really well for you and you're running 3, 4, maybe 10 times as much volume through the application. Well, maybe the way that the database was set up was really well optimized for 10,000 users, but not for 1 million. So improving the way that data gets queried from the database is an example. Optimization, improving performance. So you're not writing new feature or function. You're not designing new functionality or tools, but it's still a component of maintenance because you have to make sure the app is running as smoothly and as quickly as possible. And the fourth and last bucket of ongoing expense is what I call add-on functionality. So to be clear, this isn't a big batch of new feature and function that you took months to compile and then you decide to build a whole new add-on to your tool. This is more around features and functions where they weren't included in what you've developed to date. Your user base informs you how important and critical that they are to their work. And while the app isn't necessarily broken, the app is not fulfilling its full potential because you didn't include this functionality. It will always be the case that some amount of this work is going to be necessary. So you should account for it and include it in your budget. It differs by project, but we've seen projects ranging anywhere from 5 to 20% of their development budget to include an additional amount of that size to account for add-on functionality. So it's an important thing that you should really keep in mind, because if you don't, you may find yourself having run out of budget and get all these really thoughtful, important, critical requests from users that you just can't fulfill. Now that ongoing costs aren't going to sneak up on you, click this video to learn about the switching costs of custom software. And don't forget to subscribe. I'm publishing new videos at least once a week to help you compete and win in an increasingly technical world. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.